Um, Hello, I'm Angèle Berger. I'm the technical manager for the IHE-Europe Connectation. Thank you very much for joining. So today this webinar is dedicated to the ITI domain, and Oliver and John are going to give you an update on those profiles. On this domain, sorry. First, I will give you a few information about the connectation in Vienna. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so the connectation is going to be held the last week of June in Vienna. So what's the connectation if you are not familiar with it? So it's a formal interoperability testing event organized by IHE-Europe as a regional deployment committee of IHE International. So do you want to come? Why do you want to come? Sorry. The connectation is the best place to test your IHE implementation of your system. Might be a product or prototype. You will quickly find and fix bugs in your product or system. You will be allowed to fix issue and recompile as many times as needed. That's a way for you to complete the last mile of your software development in the sense that you will find a lot of information and details maybe to finalize your work. That's an opportunity to share with experts. So we will have many monitors, skilled developers. They will be there to support you in your testing and in resolving your issue, if any. That's a unique occasion to meet other professionals who may face the same challenges as you do when developing your system. And it's also a place where you will learn a lot from the community. So not only from the experts who will verify your work, but also from the other participants. So the registration is open till mid-March. It's a three-step registration process. First, you have to complete a form in ClickUp. It will generate your contract and invoice. And then you logged into Gazelle Test Management, which is the tool we will use to run the connectation, and then you can register your system. So when you register your system, you are expected to give us the list of profile actors your system supports, so we can tailor a test plan for you and show you what are the available partners. The connectation is also an opportunity for IHE-Europe to organize several side events. So we will have the IHE-Europe connectation from Monday to Friday, but we also have IHE Plugathon that will be scheduled, as well as the experience days. So it's 1 day and a half of conferences. We have a projectation. ELGA is an Austrian project, and there might be other meetings and European events as well. Okay, so I think now we start with ITI. Oliver, do you start presenting?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you keep the slides?
I can keep the slide. Just tell me when I need to go to the next one.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot. And thanks for the introduction. John and myself will introduce you a bit what has happened in the IHE ITI domain. I will start up with an introduction to the ITI infrastructure domain yourself, and John will tell the details afterwards what we did last year. We are both co-chairs in the IHE ITI committee, and the IT infrastructure domain defines interoperable infrastructure for the secure sharing of healthcare information. So it is quite a old domain, I would say. So it started in 2002. And maybe if you can go to the next slides. A few of you remember probably there were Word documents, but now this is almost everything transferred on a website. So you will find all information about the IT infrastructure domain on profiles.ihe.net, where we have this framework described what is all in this ITI domain. If you can maybe switch to next slide. This is a bit a graphical overview what kind of topics we have in this domain, what kind of profiles. So this is the very basics of security, core security. We have profiles there, how you do audit, how you do securing, how you check the time between the different systems, and how you apply technical signature. And then it goes further to how you do consent and user authentication authorization, and even further into patient identity management, how you can manage different identifiers or search for your patients, and which will then end you up to the, I would say, is one of the biggest part of the IT infrastructure domain is how you do document sharing. And this document sharing is across different standards and technology with different use cases. And you will see this also later on where the latest activities are. There are also newer initiatives we have in the IT infrastructure domain. This will then be talking John about also later about scheduling and finance insurance. We will get to them back also afterwards. Could go to the next slide. When we look at connectatons itself, what is then tested are these the main 4 profiles within the last years. So these consistent times I told before, audit trail and node authentication, and then the whole document sharing part, and the document sharing part based on the FHIR standard. This is mobile access to health documents. So these are currently the ones when we look at the last connectatons, which are the most heavily tested. And for sure, if you worked in one of the different IHE frameworks, you are a bit familiar how this built up. So in this technical framework, we have different integration profile, like this document sharing, for example, XS or MHD. Then we have defined different actors. You will most probably at the connectaton implement one of these actor and test against another actor which implemented in this profile is mentioned. And the transaction is then which connects that between the different actors is the messages what you exchange. And these specifications, maybe you can go to the next slide, Angel, thanks, are then either PDF documents. Most part of it now are web-based documentation. You see here an example of IUA, which is then a textual description, a web page where this whole profile is described. And if you click on to the next one, is the newer profiles which are based on FHIR are then actually FHIR implementation guides. So this is the example of the MHD. Here we have a full implementation guide which describes from the use case to the actors to the different transactions, and you have all this information not only in a textual way but also with examples and conformance resources. This helps also testing for you at the IHE Connectathon, because you can have all this structured information directly out of this implementation guide, download it and use it for validation or even code generation during development. Okay, that was the introduction. So maybe I hand over to John for the IHE profile development process and the new profiles which are available from ITI.
Thank you, Oliver. So I'm John Moehrke, co-chair of the technical committee in ITI. So what we generally do is on a annual cycle, we have four meetings. Within those four meetings, we do the work, and it's at those meetings that we have various milestones that we can move a work item along. So, for example, moving it to public comment or moving it from public comment to trial implementation. So there is a continuous development environment that we have developed from the annual environment that IHE initially started with. And ITI that in that way can handle smaller work items, but we can also handle much larger work items because of that continuous development process. So how do we, when do we go about starting something? So the planning committee is responsible for creating the backlog and prioritizing it and making sure that it's clear what is the benefit, why should we do it, who's going to be involved. And the planning committee has a monthly planning meeting, where they look at the submissions, the new submissions. They provide some feedback to the submitter on whether it's understandable and the like. And then ultimately they will look at it from a need perspective, not from a can we do it, but from a if we did this, would the broader community use it. And then the technical committee comes in and says, yeah, but this is completely not workable. Or, yeah, we think we could do this, and it seems to be a small item or a large item. So together we work through this idea of the priority and the size and the complexity and whether it's, has people who are going to work on it, whether we have capacity to work on it, and the like. We then, at these quarterly face-to-face meetings where we move something off into trial implementation, we can say, well, hey, we've got some more capacity to work now. So we will look to the prioritized list of new work items and see which ones we can add. And you'll see in a couple of slides what we just did a couple of weeks ago. Sometimes we add a lot, sometimes we add a very little, but it's all based on what can the technical committee do a good job on. We try very hard not to overload ourselves, but we also try very hard to make sure that we're dealing with the things that the planning committee said is really important to the industry. Once we start a work item, we usually set up a bi-weekly teleconference so that we have a regular pulse on moving the thing forward. At the next face-to-face meeting, we have like 2 or 3 hour or hour and a half long segments during that week where we work on it, and potentially we decide to elevate it. We do have defenses in there in case something stops being worked on. We will kick something back to the curb, and it'll have to come in through the planning proposal all over again. So the public comment phase goes out. We get comments back, and we resolve those comments before we go to trial implementation. One of the other things that we do tend to do here is some things are new work items, but they're basically, hey, we noticed that this profile needs additional attention. For example, maybe we've learned of some bug reports either through uh, uh, change proposals or GitHub issues or just some feedback from the Connectathon. So sometimes we will do a small piece of work, and you'll kind of see some of those examples too. So next slide. All right, so this last face-to-face meeting, we had a pretty light load because we didn't want to take a very long, heavy load through the Christmas holidays and New Year's. So we didn't have that much of a heavy load, but we were able to open up some space because we were able to get the MCSD addition of a feed transaction off into public comment. And therefore, we were able to look at some of the backlog. Actually, this is the things we worked on. I'm sorry. So, which turns out to be that one. Some of the things that we have done since the last Connectathon is what this slide is all about. So some brand new profiles in some domains that we haven't really done before is the finance and insurance services and the scheduling profile. I'll get to those on the next couple of slides. And then we also worked on adding a create update RESTful interaction to the MCSD directory. So historically, the MCSD only had the ability for your directory to go out and pull updates from some authority. This way, it switches the case into more of a RESTful. If you're an authority and you need to update the directory, you now have RESTful create, update, delete capability in MCSD. And then the sex and gender profiling, HL7, DICOM, IHE had a joint work to identify how the various sex and gender concepts should be defined and used within the various standards that we have. ITI has looked at that and said, well, for HL7 V2, for HL7 V3, for XCPD, for MCSD, for all of the things in which we are communicating people, and actually I think MCSD was considered part of that. We took on a work item to look into that. Turns out some of it we really can't do because there really wasn't anything provided by HL7 for the HL7 V3 transactions, but we took the approach that we're not going to add a normative "thou shall" communicate sex and gender elements, but we did add in a CP, which is out for ballot soon, more of a, if you need to communicate these concepts, you shall use these standardized methodologies that HL7 sex and gender have defined. So that'll be with V2, that'll be with all of the FHIR through PDQM profile. That will be in the XDS metadata for source patient info. But I think that's the limitation there. We kind of looked at the others and said, well, we're not forbidding it from being used, but there's not a clear draw for it. So if we go to the next slide, we'll get into Yeah, so the finance and insurance services is brand new, and it's a domain that we really haven't done before in IHE at all. But within FHIR, there are a set of resources that support finance, billing requests, insurance requests, insurance responses. So, and within the USA, there's a plenty of accelerator projects that are profiling this for US pattern of finance and insurance. But outside the US, there wasn't, and especially within the green fields of the emerging markets. So what we did was we said, well, if we're not trying to approach the U.S. market, what would be a good set of profiles for finance and insurance services? So this implementation guide goes into just minimal profiling, and it follows the profiling recommendations that are in FHIR Core for these services. So it kind of wraps them into an implementation guide. The expectation, I think, is that this is a 1.0 release and that we will start to see either regional specializations, which makes sense that regions would specialize, or we may see some of those regional specifications push up some more global requirements that can be profiled within this implementation guide. But by its very nature, it just sets forward the normal integration of a payer and a provider, and it sets up the interaction models. There's not a lot of deep profiling within this yet. So that kind of profiling is something that we do expect a region would approach. So next slide. And then scheduling. This is scheduling, primarily the use case is a patient wants to use their app to find a slot that they can meet with their doctor, or a slot they can meet a specialist, or that kind of thing. So it's that kind of scheduling. This is a derived implementation guide from the base work that Argonaut did in STU3. Argonaut has not progressed it, so we worked with Argonaut to move this intellectual property into IHE, move it up to FHIR R4, and add some improvements that the implementers have brought to us. So it is primarily focused around a set of operations rather than primarily around RESTful interactions with schedule and slot and appointment. And the reason for that is that many of the implementations of scheduling today are not fundamentally FHIR. They can easily respond to a operation that says, hey, what slots are available for this given kind of appointment with these kinds of people in this kind of time frame. They can respond to that with an appointment set of resources, and then within there are transactions to say, hold that one, or go ahead and block that one for me, and then other ones for I need to update it or I need to cancel it, and those kinds of things. So it is primarily very operation based rather than RESTful, and that was to enable systems that are not fundamentally RESTful but do scheduling today. Anyone who does RESTful schedule, slot, and appointment can respond to these operations too. They would be rather easy to respond to. But by going with operations, we make it easier for a system that's not fundamentally that based. So next slide. So one of the things that as we were coming, to put this presentation together, there was a lot of changes since last time, and it's like, well, wait a minute, that's just our normal annual integration of change proposals. So this is kind of laying out all of the things, well, that had some significant changes. So within the technical framework, the normative pieces, um, we have updated a few things. Now, we didn't have that many CPs this year, so we were able to more surgically update uh, profiles and transactions and such. So when you go into the technical framework, you might see that there is a revision 20.1. Those are the pages that have had updates because of CPs. Those pages that had no CPs to be applied, we left them at revision 20. Um, and this is really just recognizing the flexibility that we have with HTML publication. It's recognizing our intent to communicate, how big of a change is it? So it's just a .1 because it's just CP integration. So you'll see also that there were some updates to DSIG because we're doing the JSON signature option. The updates to DSIG, were part of that, and they were done right away because it was easier to not have to be tracking two different things. We've also got a supplement out there for updating of the DSub subscription models. So the DSub extensions supplement has also been updated through a public comment phase. It's to add some capabilities that we've added to DSub M over time. And then, some of the other profiles that have been updated. We did update RESTful ATNA because of some CPs. We did update IUA because of some CPs. And MCSD, PDQM, and MHD. One of the things that this is also pointing out is a if we're updating the technical framework, you can always go back to the archives to see what the differences are. The ability we have with GitHub as a tool gives us the ability for you to see exactly what changed. Within implementation guides, there's an additional capability there. Because within implementation guides, we have the fact that the implementation guides are published with a history page, and the history page has the various releases and the changes that we have made between each release. So you can actually see with an implementation guide a little bit more detail, a little bit more visible than you would with just a purely HTML publication. So next slide. So one of the implementation guides that we think is really going to be hot at the next Connectathon is the sharing of IPS. IPS is, of course, a pretty hot topic from HL7. And the sharing of IPS is an implementation guide we put together that just kind of helps introduce the community that doesn't understand IHE's document sharing, but that community that does understand FHIR. So the sharing of IPS is really just more of an introduction implementation guide. It does bring together the FHIR IPS. It does bring together the various document sharings, and it does, kind of wrap those things into a nice little bow. We are in the process of doing a change proposal that will add the CDA IPS to this implementation guide, but today it is very focused on the FHIR IPS. So next slide. All right, so as I said a couple of weeks ago, we had our face-to-face meeting, and we picked up new work items. So we were currently working on a verifiable health links, which is going to be a development that is in parallel-ish with the HL7's SHL. But it is going to be adding a different level, a different way of providing a trust framework, where the Smart Health Links is based around a OAuth interaction to retrieve the information, or a non-authenticated, because it doesn't really define that. Verifiable health links comes to us with some additional use cases that say, well, if I receive a health link, how do I know that it's a proper health link versus a scam? So there's a method to check that a health link is valid before you ever try to access it. Second, there was this concern that, hey, if I create a health link, I want to create the health link such that it can't be used by anyone other than those I identify at the time I create it. So there's also use cases in here to tie the health link to a destination from the creation time. And then, the additional capabilities of being able to utilize the document sharing infrastructures. Those are kind of the things that we're working through. So we're moving into volume 2 with that project. The other 3 listed here are new items. So we had quite a bit of capacity to pick up. So we picked up 3 new items. One of them, the XCDR endpoint addressing, is hopefully a very small one. This one is saying that, as a XCDR push goes across the federation, when it gets to the last one, that last one has some requirements to look at the intended recipient and further focus the delivery to that intended recipient, and not just stop at the home community ID. So that one might just be a CP, but we have looked at it and said, well, it's certainly delivering a pretty big capability. The XCA Federation of MHDSs is also something that might not need to be written down, but we need to write it down. And that is, if I have an MHDS community, think FHIR-based document sharing like XDS is, but FHIR-based, how do I attach that to an XCA federation? We have this for XDS. We don't have it really for MHDS. Within that, we're looking at just adding this capability of how does a community respond to XCA incoming queries. So it's a responding gateway binding to an MHDS community discussion. And then the third one listed is the de-identification handbook. So de-identification handbook, we've published it about 10 years ago, and there's a lot of new efforts right now dealing with de-identifying data for purposes of research or purposes of AI use or what have you. And therefore, we have a new set of people who are looking at the de-identification handbook and saying, boy, but it doesn't speak to my use case, or it doesn't speak to the terminologies that are state of the art. So we're going to be updating the handbook itself, moving it to a publication, of HTML publication as opposed to PDF. and then potentially adding some additional use case examples that might cause us to identify some generic patterns as well. So anybody who's looking at de-identification, we invite you to come on in and help us with this project as well. Next slide. And then, clearly all of the ITI profiles are on profiles.ih.net in the ITI. So by all means, this is where everything is. Yeah, I will point out, as long as you have this slide up here, you'll note that even the trial implementation supplements are listed on this volume 1 page. You will, if you click through one of those, you will end up at a page that does have a direct link, but essentially all of our profiles are listed on that volume 1 page. So that's it. If you need to contact any of us, and then I think we take questions.
Yes, thank you. Maybe because you introduced a few profiles in trial implementation. It could be good to remind the audience how to submit comments. Because I did it this morning on FAIS, and it was just I was not sure what I was doing.
Well, tell you what, I'll share and show, because
yes, it would be better.
And I recently blogged this. Let's see, I think I want to go ahead and share. Is that coming through? So if it's a implementation guide, like MHD is, there are two different ways you can provide comments. One is if you are used to GitHub. Let's see, can I do this? If you're part of our GitHub, you can use these links to get to a GitHub issue. Ultimately, in ITI, we use GitHub issues to track everything, because that way, we can even point to, well, this change was because of this particular comment. If indeed you are not within GitHub, and that's perfectly fine, then propose a change. Oh, I turned off my annotation. Then propose a change over here on this side will take you to a form. So let me just go ahead. This one here is a Google form. You come into here, you go to IT infrastructure, and then you can where is the, well, Mary, where did the, I guess this is it, but that's kind of weird. I mean, this is indeed the form. How can
I agree. We need a flashy button. Just press you.
Yeah. So this form is what you would use for anybody. So if you don't have a GitHub account, you would fill out who you are, where your email, so that we can contact you to ask you further questions. So this here is what we would generally expect to come in. Now these ultimately we turn into GitHub items, and now I'm trying to figure out how to back. Okay, fine. But normally, you know, if you have a GitHub issue, you would come into this and you would have either it's a feature request or it's a public comment issue. Both of these are just really formats to help, just like the Google is, to help you figure out what do we want to know. You know, so what is the issue and what is your recommendation? So this is really trying to drive you know, some consistency. You'll note that some of the newer implementation guides than MHD, and I didn't realize MHD was this far behind. But let's just go into Bulb. If I go into Bulb and I hit a new issue, I get the same ones. Okay, so Bulb is not new enough. Well, you know what? I can go to scheduling. There we go. Scheduling is new. If I go to a new issue, yeah, there's a few additional things. But again, this here is more of a form, so it walks you through these things. So sometimes you'll see this, and that's just because we've used fancier capabilities in Git, and we haven't updated the historic ones. We probably should. So, and then the other is if you are dealing with, you know, one of the classics, you know, you're looking at PICs and you're noticing an issue here. This is a little bit less in your face, but if you go to general, well, here, I jumped there too quick. So if you're at the root of profiles IG.net, there is this general introductions, which is not domain specific. And if you go into here, there is a discussion around comment process. So, which does kind of take you, you know, right over to the place we were before, or to GitHub issues. So it takes you to the same place, but essentially, if you have a comment, this is usually the place that you're going to submit a comment. Did that answer the question well enough?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And
Now I'm
thank you
trying to
very
figure out
much
how
for
do I
the
get
whole
rid of this image?
presentation. So there were one question regarding the availability of the materials. So the webinar will be posted on IHE-Europe YouTube channel. Any questions regarding the presentation itself so far? I guess you can unmute if you want to ask directly to John and Oliver.
Mm-hmm. I think there was two.
Yeah, I think there was two,
Yeah.
but I see only one. I don't know what was
The second one is you responding. So.
Yes, but I responded after. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if we have the ability to delete the message.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes. No.
You talked about the RESTful ATNA supplement. Mm-hmm. Is it related to the bulb profile, or is it something else?
Yeah, it is. So let me just go back to here. So RESTful ATNA is this one right here. RESTful ATNA updates ATNA to add FHIR audit event and to add a query to the audit repository. So RESTful ATNA is unfortunately still today a PDF, but it's primarily because it is a rather different kind of a thing in that it is updating the technical framework to add capabilities to ATNA. So within the RESTful ATNA, you'll see it adds a bunch of options, and it adds FHIR support. So that's what RESTful ATNA does. BULP presumes that RESTful ATNA exists because BULP is only showing patterns of use of the FHIR audit event for RESTful interactions. So this is already presuming that the record audit event can support a FHIR audit event. It also has the retrieve ATNA event, which exists in RESTful ATNA. So this comes from RESTful ATNA. It's not defined in BULP. So this here builds upon RESTful ATNA.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, we really should get RESTful ATNA into an HTML publication, so it's a little bit more used.
Is it adopted already?
Adapted to what?
No. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it is new, but I was wondering if there is a
RESTful ATNA?
Yeah.
Yeah, RESTful ATNA has been around for a long time. It is supporting, again, using the FHIR audit event. So if you're using FHIR audit event instead of DICOM audit message, then you're using RESTful ATNA.
Okay.
Because ATNA proper only supports DICOM audit message schema, XML schema. So RESTful ATNA is what adds the FHIR audit event in both JSON and XML FHIR. And if you go to one of the other things, just to show some navigation, you'll note if you go to ATNA, you'll see that it does indicate that ATNA is updated by RESTful ATNA. So it's only within RESTful ATNA that you will see the FHIR schema used. Okay?
But yeah, I'm trying to find out in the IHE profile that we can register for at the Connectathon, but I don't
You
find
register for ATNA, and then you have the options.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
FHIR feed and audit consumer, something like that.
Yeah, RESTful ATNA is not a profile. It is a modification to ATNA. Okay, so you would
It's a supplement, yes. Okay.
Yeah, so you would sign up for ATNA with the ATX feed, ATX FHIR feed, or so you want to add
retrieve audit.
Yeah, or retrieve.
Yes, I see the retrieve audit message. Yes.
Yeah. So it adds options to ATNA. It's the options that are the key for signing up. That's actually a good thing for us to have gone through today.
Yeah.
And you can also sign up for FAIS and scheduling. They have been added in, and the new JSON
And the
options
DSub,
in DSIG. They have been added this morning.
So there's this. This is the DSIG, the using JSON signature, scheduling, and finance. Those are now available in Gazelle.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I can see, like I was surfing the IHE.net and I can see, just a moment, I can see that this profile has been updated
Mm-hmm.
by the RESTful Atna supplement.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm going through the Atna profile, it's basically a profile, right? So it is written, this profile has been updated by the RESTful Atna profile.
Yep.
So does it mean both are equivalent nowadays?
I didn't understand your question.
Atna and RESTful Atna, both are different or equivalent or similar? That is my question.
So the RESTful Atna is a supplement that updates Atna and adds additional options and actors.
Okay, additional options to the actors.
Yeah.
The
And an
profile.
additional actor and additional actors.
Okay, okay, got it.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left for more questions if needed. Okay, so thank you, John and Oliver, for your time today and for the great presentation. So registration for the Connect Lesson is open till mid-March. And if you go to connectlesson.ihe-europe.net, you will find the links to register to the event. And for sure, in case you have any question, you can contact me or John and Oliver if it's ITI specific. We will be happy to answer your questions. So thank you again for joining this call, and I wish you a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.